Man, it appears that a lot of these companies respond only to the noise rather than the reality in terms of gaming, which at the same time, a lot of the arbiters, the people whom hold the responsibility to talk about video games and their quality, have not necessarily done a very good job in regard to representing these video games very well. So apparently, more layoffs have shown up. And the reason the company is actually doing this is because they deem that gamers do not want necessarily to play new titles, but prefer to play sequels, possibly remakes and remasters, because apparently Capcom's formula has started to catch on. Because, if you think about it, after they did their Resident Evil remakes, it seems like remakes started to actually bleed its way into Sony and bleed its way into a lot of other publishers as well. So Hunter here reports that 505 Games, parent company of Digital Bros, is laying off 30% of its staff. They say gamers mostly want to play sequels and they're canceling new IPs. Gamers, is this what you want? Well, apparently kind of sort of so, because in one hand, a lot of gamers talked about how a lot of these games are not they're not revolutionizing the wheel. There's nothing really revolutionary about these new games. They're not reinventing the wheel. Like, Starfield is not really a big deal. Yeah, I just see the conversations, right? Redfall kind of sucked. It just wasn't executed very well. But when they bring out your friendly neighborhood old game, you're like, oh, look at the graphics of this game that I played in 2001. Oh my gosh, it's so freaking fantastic, right? And now they're responding to exactly what it is that a lot of people have been doing and talking about, because this is exactly it. So let's read Digital Bros' statement, because, you got to hear from the mouth of the horse. So Digital Bros Group announces an organizational review with an expected workforce reduction of approximately 30%. This is very sad. No significant impact on the expected results for FY 2024. They've reviewed its projects to align with the new competitive environment. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, which new competitive environment are these people talking about? Are you talking about the new competitive environment that was just set like a few years ago? Because you're going to jump into all these sequels and realize like fatigue is going to set in. Because again, this argument is very silly, and I'm going to obliterate this crap in a second. Just let's hold on. And by the way, if you're thinking how I'm going to do it, just think Elden Ring. This is expected to represent a reduction of approximately 30% of the global workforce, but no significant effect of restructuring costs is expected on the annual projected results for FY 2024. Milan, November 14, 2023. It's a European company. Digital Bros Group, DIB-MI, video games company listed on the Eurostar, Milan, ISNT, blah, 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 and part of the blah, 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 Italia Small Cap Index, blah, 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 and Eurotech Leaders announces an organizational review across its development studios and publishing units. The video game market has evolved since the pandemic to be more selective in terms of new games, with consumers increasingly reverting to well-established intellectual properties and playing these same games for longer periods. Digital Bros strategy has had to adapt to this new and evolving competitive scenario and will focus its efforts moving forward on the release of sequels and new versions of previously successful and established games with a limited number and new larger budgets productions. I blame many of these folk who have these conversations about how their old game remade is the best thing that ever hit the market since peanut butter, and did not give any of these new games a chance because your nostalgia was pretty much the biggest and most concerning thing to you. This is exactly why. In fact, let's move this particular blame game up the ladder a little bit. What did we see in the nomination of the Game Awards just a few hours ago? Jeff Keighley, no offense to you, but the organization that you're running, or the shtick that you're running here, has literally gone ahead to nominate a remake while literally putting aside a brand new top seller of the year on the sidelines. The narrative sometimes does not even match with the reality, yet 30% of the workforce is getting laid off with this as the cover story. It may not even be that this is actually the reality, honestly. It may just be they just looked and said, this is probably what we're going to run with, because this is a corporation. I don't know what to believe. I'm just throwing out my own, possible hypotheses, because they can't show me the numbers. They're only giving me, say, just what they want to tell me based on what they think is profitable for them. Until I can analyze their financial statements, which I'm probably not even quite capable of doing fully, I won't be able to verify if this is the truth or not. In order to prioritize high quality and long-standing successful IP titles, Digital Bros has reconsidered the number of projects under development, and as such will review the organizational structure accordingly to align with the evolving competitive environment in the medium to long term to ensure maximum operational efficiency. This program is expected to represent a reduction of approximately 30% of the global workforce, with a predominant portion concentrated within the studios. Digital Bros management believes that this program will not impact the expected profit and loss statement of FY 2023, with no significant effect of the restructuring cost on the annual projected results due to the savings resulting from reduced payroll costs. So I hope you can eat that Resident Evil 4, and Mario and Zelda nominations that you threw out there, while you guys pretty much went ahead to ignore new IPs for the most part. Do you see this? Do you see where the challenge is? There isn't even any room for any new titles in the Game Award nominations. And in some people's minds, like Keith over here, sorry to say, but these people have a platform and cannot even look at the repercussions of what it is that they're actually saying. Everything is multifaceted and multidimensional. Yes, you cannot see everything, but sometimes you got to take a breath and realize we have a part 2 of a Zelda, part 15 of a Mario, part 4 of a Resident Evil, part 2 of a Spider-Man, part 3 of a Baldur's Gate, and part 2 of an Alan Wake game, all nominated for the Game of the Year. In a year where we had a part 1 of a Hi-Fi Rush, part 1 of a Hogwarts Legacy, part 1 of a Starfield, and many other games out there that showed up for the very first time, and not a single one of them made it into this category. Do you see the sickness, ladies and gentlemen? This is a big sickness, and this is going to continue to happen. Because, to be honest, and to be very fair, and let me be fair, there's a side to what it is that they're saying in this company that is, in my opinion, quite valid. And that is, yes, players like established IPs, but players also like quality. Players also like a game that is made with the player in mind every given time. Elden Ring, like I said, is one that obliterates that narrative, because it came in and in the face of multiple games, as we saw in the Game of the Year, award nominations in the past few years, it obliterated them and took Game of the Year. But it was a hard sell because it even had to introduce a lot of different aspects of its former games into its own self. But at the same time, no one is saying that From Software should have lost their identity or their core DNA in terms of game development. But when you see new IPs or new iterations of IPs, players have a knee-jerk reaction. I'm showing you Gotham Knights. Remember y'all's knee-jerk reaction when Gotham Knights came out? Remember? They had the Arkham formula and they just had to execute on it, and then boom. You're going to start seeing this on the bigger stage. A lot of these studios are going to stick with remakes and remasters and part 2s and part 4s and part 5s. And you're going to get a market saturation that looks very, very weird. And when that happens, be sure to come back and take a look at the receipts of how we got here. Because I saw people laughing. A lot of people think this is an Xbox Pro. Oh, this is just Xbox. You really think that is the case, right? Don't you? I mean, most of you really think that that's the case. Let's look at the Game of the Year award nominations from the big publishers, because somebody used this to mock Xbox. But let me show you what the reality kind of looks like. Because the truth is, it's established IPs that make their way in here for the most part. And this is the narrative that's been created over the last few years. Some have been able to break through, but they're a minority. 2013, from Sony The Last of Us Part 1, it was a new IP. Nothing had been seen like it, but then Nintendo at the same time came out with Mario. I don't even know what game this is in 2014 from Nintendo, but maybe it's some cool game. I don't play Nintendo games. But then there's another Mario game in 2015, Bloodborne breaks in. It's From Software that's literally reinventing the wheel and coming out with full force to get in there. Uncharted 4 breaks in. A part 4 breaks in. Isn't that crazy? And 2017, what is this? Horizon something? Horizon Zero Dawn. And you get some other Nintendo game. This looks like another Mario game. I don't even know what it looks like. And there's Zelda. Zelda of what? How many Zeldas have been made? 2018's God of War, which builds on the name that it already established from older IPs. And Spider-Man show up as Game of the Year for Sony and PlayStation in that year. They take two very established names out there. I don't know what else came out, but I think this was probably a year where it takes, I think God of War won this year. But there was a year that it takes 2 won. But then come and look at, say, 2019, Death Stranding, it broke in, and then some other Nintendo game, right? Then you had Last of Us Part 2, showing up 7 years later as an established IP. Ghost of Tsushima breaks in, but doesn't win because The Last of Us Part 2 pretty much gets favoritism shown towards it because Ghost of Tsushima was just a, in my opinion anyways, was just a better setup for a new game that was coming into the, the Sony lineup. The Last of Us Part 2 was not doing anything new, it was a sequel. Then you had Ratchet and Clank, which had already built an establishment, and Metroid Prime. You had God of War Ragnarok. You had Horizon Forbidden West. Basically, these cats coming in with sequels just 4 years after, and then you had Xenoblade 2. And then this year has been basically what I think is the worst selection of Game of the Year titles. Every single thing on that list is a sequel or a sequel of some sequel or some very established IP. Look at this. And then at the same time, look at this. These so-called noisemakers are going to be such a big problem for gamers in the next few years because you know what's going to go into development after this year? A lot of your favorite old games. And if you want to play, new versions of them, hey, be my guest. But I must not hear this no reinventing the wheel talk because many are trying to reinvent the wheel, or at least many are coming in with groundbreaking changes in IPs like Lies of P and some other games, but they're not getting any recognition. Hogwarts Legacy, no recognition, nothing, because of agendas that are being put out here. Ladies and gentlemen, don't forget the receipts when it's time to collect. Thanks for watching. Peace out.